for the first pre-conference, PLS pre-conference webinar. We're going to have 3 of these webinars. This is just the PLS committee decided this would be a great idea for us to have contact, obviously we do throughout the year, but to get a jump start with you before you get to PLS. As we know, PLS can be very intense and exciting at the same time, but this gives us an opportunity to give you some insight prior to coming in April. This first session is on strategic planning and volunteer recruitment. Okay, just a quick how to participate. This is your, you should have this toolbar screen, open and close your panel with the red arrow. I'm going to quickly go through these. View and select and test your audio. If you're having any problems with your audio, you can view and test it by clicking here. Submit any text questions you have right in this box, and Tina will be monitoring those throughout. We do have an opportunity at the end of this webinar to answer all of your questions, but certainly type them in as we're going along, and we'll try to answer those as we receive them. Or you can raise your hand. This symbol here that's highlighted is when, if you have a question, certainly raise your hand. And again, we will get to all of those at the end of the webinar. Thank you all, and let's get started. The PLS, this is the committee and the staff that works on the President's Leadership Symposium. Nola Nasser-Gertner is our PLS chair this year. Tiffany Konenkamp is our past chair. And I'm so sorry, embarrassing, my phone was not turned off. So you're supposed to do that when you're going into sessions. I apologize. Andrew Weinberg is our incoming PLS chair. Kevin Hebbleswaite is our president-elect, SMPS National President-elect. Holly Bolton is our SMPS National Delegate. Tina Myers is our Senior Vice President. I am Mary Cruz, Director of Chapter Services, and Dan Riley is Education Manager, and he helps us a lot with getting coordinated for PLS, for the conference. Okay, why plan? Let's jump right in. This is obviously a little excerpt from Alice in Wonderland. I mean, we all understand this. Alice, which way should I go? That depends on where you're going. I don't know where I'm going, then it doesn't matter. If you don't have a direction, if you don't have a plan, and it can be a simple plan, a 2-page plan, but there has to be some goals outlined and strategies for your chapter. This really helps keep everyone in line and having that direction. Obviously, we know, in a word, that strategic planning stinks. None of us love it. Those of you that do love it, I don't know many of them, but it does certainly help, and most understand why it has to happen. It's just not a fun process. So a lot of times it doesn't get done. And I just want to briefly reference, while we're on the screen, I had sent out a survey to all of the president-elects. 40 responded, and we got, just so you understand, 60% of those that responded do not have a strategic plan. 40% do have a plan, are not loving the plan, or are in the process of revising that plan. And some are happy with what is in place. Also, you know, is your strategic planning meeting organized and productive? Most of you, 38% said it's productive, 10% said unproductive, and no planning session at all was close to 30%. Does your chapter use a facilitator? 70% said no, 18% said yes. I'm just quickly giving you this information so you know that you're not alone if you don't have a plan, but we're going to help you with that today. It doesn't have to be such an arduous process that ends with a massive document that goes nowhere. Think simple, clear, short, 2 to 3 pages. I know several chapters have some great plans that are just 2 to 3 pages. Some have a much larger document, not to say that it's not great and helpful, but just know that whatever your chapter, you do what's right for your chapter, but it doesn't have to be such a large and arduous process. Who should be a part of this? Your strategic planning session, there are 2 sessions I think that needs to take place. Your strategic planning session is with your incoming board and possibly a facilitator. I do recommend a facilitator. It does not have to be someone that you hire, that you pay. You don't have to go outside of your of the industry for this person. I think there's great people and experience right within your chapter. A facilitator can bring structure, impartial perspective, and useful experience and feedback. For instance, I know several chapters have reached out to past presidents. This is a great opportunity for them to come back, or a fellow, and to help you and to be that sounding board during this meeting process. A couple of chapters, one I know in particular, went to their past president from several years back, and she was also a national past president, and she's in this area for the DC chapter, and she was their facilitator, and they said it just would not have been as successful without her. So just something to keep in mind. Also, you can always reach out to the national staff or board members. We certainly always have to look at budget, but we're willing. I know Kevin Hebblethwaite is on the call. He's been a facilitator for many of the chapters in their strategic planning sessions. So certainly this is something that we may be able to help you with as well. But we highly recommend it to keep it focused. Also, this is your summer planning session. You have your strategic planning session first with just your board, and again, this is just recommendations, maybe a week following or a couple of weeks following that session. You want to have your summer planning session. This is you getting ready for the year, programming, what's going to go into your programming, any big initiatives you have coming up, and you also can review your strategic plan with the existing board that's going out and then your incoming board. So having both parties participate in your annual planning session can add value and continuity for you. When should this happen? This depends on your chapter. Really, it's up to you. But we found that most chapters conduct their strategic planning session no later than June or July, before your summer planning session. So again, there's two sessions, your strategic planning and then your summer planning session for the year. So typically, they take place in June and July, and the strategic planning session happens prior to that. So what does that mean for you in PLS? Obviously, now is the time for you to start looking at your strategic plan if your chapter has one, evaluating it, becoming familiar with what you have currently. And if you don't have one, this is a time for you as a leader just to start thinking about it yourself. What do you want it to be? Going through those goals in your mind. And Tiffany will get more on that in a moment. But then, so when you come to PLS, you might have something in hand with you. You might have your plan, but you've already become familiar with it, or have an idea of where you want to go with it. And then once you're done with PLS in April, you go into the summer with an action plan. Where should we have this meeting? I know this sounds silly, not in a bar, but there are lots of chapters, I know, and not in a derogatory way, and it's not intended that way, but a lot of times, let's meet here, you know, we'll have dinner, we'll go over the strategic plan, and then sometimes it loses focus and insight. So not in a bar is probably a good idea. Obviously, celebrate once it's done. Absolutely. But usually a board meetings conference, board members conference room is a great idea. That way, if you have individuals that maybe need to call in or Skype in, whatever that may be, they can do that. It's not highly recommended to have them conference call in because it just doesn't feel as close. Having them all there would be great. Or even a board member's home. It makes it a little bit more personal, and it can be very productive. Okay, the plan. Tiffany, I'm just going to quickly excuse me, not click, but go over the mission and vision, and then Tiffany Conenkamp is going to take it from here. The mission for your strategic plan. These are the elements of a strategic plan. The first part is the mission, and you should be in line, and align your mission, shouldn't be aligned with, but it should be the national mission. Excuse me, I'm going to just go over. SMPS mission is to advocate for, educate, and connect leaders in the building industry. Simply, that is the SMPS national mission. That should be every chapter's mission as well. That should not be different. The vision should also be aligned with SMPS National's vision. We'll go over that in just a moment, but you can also expand on that. You can have a vision for your chapter. So those two elements we'll hit on again. Tiffany, if you want to go ahead and
Mary,
just...
can I chime in before Tiffany gets in there? Sorry, Tiffany. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that all of you know, because I know that you might be preparing for the Striving for Excellence, whether it's the full award submittal or your programs or a special event or communications. But one of the things that we're working on this year in the criteria is to make sure that you've looked at what you've done, and you're going to need to identify how you have aligned with the SMPS national mission and vision. As Mary said, we do have one mission, and some of you actually might have something a little bit different than ours and didn't realize that it really should be in line, but please start paying attention to that, especially if you're going to be applying for the Striving for Excellence. And the vision, we still want you to be in line with the SMPS national vision. However, as a chapter, like Mary said, you can certainly expand upon that, make something a little bit more specific, either for a short-term or even a long-term. A vision, obviously, is typically long-term, but some of our chapters are looking at this in just a little bit different way. But I just want to make sure that for all of you who are planning on this, you understand that that's going to be just a little change in the Striving for Excellence criteria, which will be posted next week on the website. So I just wanted to chime in. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Tiffany Konenkamp, again, is going to run us through. She is, the past PLS chair. Tiffany has been president of the Atlanta chapter and has won several awards, chapter president of the year, and she has conducted several strategic planning sessions and been a part of that. So she's going to help us with the next 4 steps. Tiffany?
Is she muted?
I'm just going to double check.
There is a question mark. I'm looking too.
Tiffany?
Yes.
There you are.
I'm like, y'all muted me like 10 minutes ago.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's okay. I just introduced you, so if you want to jump right in, just a quick review of these next 4 steps.
I've got it. Okay, so Tina and Mary touched on the mission and vision. Definitely the mission is the SMPS national mission, and the vision. You want the strategic plan, obviously, to all of your goals to tie into the main mission and vision. I find that a lot of people make the process a lot harder than it has to be. So we thought we'd break it down into 4 steps. I didn't come up with this plan. It came from a couple of different places, so just want to let you know that. But I can't cite any references at this point because I've pulled it from so many places I don't really know where all I got it. Okay, so there is one thing I want to say about this. We want to keep it simple in the 4 steps, but before going through the first 3 steps with your board, I really believe that you, as the president-elect, the incoming president, go through this exercise on your own and come to the board meeting, the strategic planning meeting, with your own analysis, with your own key initiatives, and your ideas of how to implement those to get the process started, and also so it does not take so long. You know, you want to give them 3 or, I think these should be our 5 goals. What do y'all think? Add, edit, etc. So just keep in mind you want to do this on your own beforehand and then do these 4 steps or the first 3 as you get together on your strategic planning. So the first thing you're going to do is 1, analysis, assess your current reality and your past performance. We're going to talk more about these in detail in the coming slides. Number 2, you're going to make collective decisions together about your goals and the key initiatives that you are going to implement in order to reach those goals. And then number 3, you're going to talk about how to implement the goals by creating action plans. And then number 4, we'll talk about you're going to create a plan as well for regular follow-up on the plan.
And Tiffany, you had mentioned through your process, when you went through this, you kind of did homework before. You kind of went through this process on your own, just evaluated some things, and then made some phone calls prior to your actual strategic planning session. How did you handle your homework?
Oh, right. So I went through this exercise on my own, but definitely not without feedback from the board members, current and past. And what I did was call all of the directors and get their ideas on what worked and what didn't and where we needed to tweak things. And then that way I could come to the strategic planning meeting kind of with an idea of where we wanted to go.
Right. So basically, before you get to your strategic planning session, you schedule it for June, whenever that is. But in this time frame, you spend time making phone calls, talking to past leaders and the past board members, and finding out what their thoughts are on where the chapter has been, what were some of the goals that maybe weren't accomplished and you thought should be. And you're just making those phone calls, doing that planning, and you kind of walk through this process on your own. Write down your own goals, what you see this happening for this chapter, how you see it being implemented into action, and then you kind of have that started. It's not that you're doing this for your chapter, but it's just your idea so that when you get there, you kind of have some framework to start with.
That's right, and it really does help the planning process move along.
Great. Okay, let me get. Okay, so again, the national mission, this is on the national website, so you can copy and paste it right into your plan. SMPS mission is to advocate for, educate, and connect leaders in the building industry. One of the things that one of the chapters did, that when they created their goals, they broke it down into three. In these three, they did advocate, educate, and connect. Under advocate, they had 2 goals. Under educate, they had 3 goals, and under connect, they had 3 goals. And by the way, there are several plans that I have from chapters that I'm going to be saving in the My SMPS community. Some are already there, but I'll send you a link after this so you can actually see some chapter plans. Again, the vision, like Tina said, should be aligned with the SMPS national vision. And our vision is, SMPS vision is for premier professional services firms to recognize SMPS as their most trusted resource for building business and achieving success. Again, you can expand on that for your own chapter vision, and you can get that information directly from our site. Analysis. Tina, I'm sorry, was going to talk with us about analysis. Tina?
I'm happy to. All right. Clearly, as you're working on a strategic plan and you start getting your group together and your team together, it is very difficult to do any of these things successfully and to put together a great plan if you don't understand the data, if you don't understand and if you haven't analyzed what your current situation is. So, here are just a couple of key things that you need to think about, and, hopefully you're doing this already, and if not, you really do need to begin thinking about these things. The basic things you must always understand out there before you go forward and determine what you're going to do the year ahead, a couple of years ahead, is understand who your competition is, what your competition is out there. Many times, what you may find out, there may be an opportunity there may be a threat there. That threat you might be able to turn into an opportunity. So when we're thinking about competition, clearly there are some organizations out there who are not, who are for profit, that might be, offering educational sessions and might be offering things that maybe we can't as often as they can, but maybe, when you start understanding that, well, how can you align what your services are in a better way? How do you align your chapter in that membership in ways that maybe they can't? But also understanding many of those other sister organizations or other associations that maybe you're working with right now, understanding what they're offering and maybe finding opportunities, which many of you have, in working together with them in joint programs. Now, one of the things I just want to briefly talk on about those type of alliances. I know that some of our chapters might not have had some really great experiences maybe working with some other sister local chapter organizations, maybe because they saw it as a competition. But if you can really start developing those relationships and showing that what SMPS has to offer, we're the marketers, maybe you're working with an engineering group, we can really help show our expertise and align ourselves. But overall, the message is that you still must understand the competition out there. You must understand what they're delivering and what the value is to the people who are taking advantage of their services or their programs or other offerings. So as we go further down, I hope all of you truly understand wherever you're located, whether you're in Sacramento, maybe you're in Las Vegas, maybe you're in Maine. You must understand that all of your demographics aren't necessarily the same. Many of you may be in a local area where you might have primarily engineering firms. That's who your members are. Or maybe, and I think this might be the case for Las Vegas, you might have a lot of large organizations, but they might be satellite offices. Well, what does that mean to you as far as what you're doing for bringing in, not just bringing in new members, but in terms of your strategic plan? What does it mean and how you have to service and what you need to do in the future for those members that are representing those maybe smaller satellite organizations? So you just have some things that you need to think about, but you must understand who they are, what they represent, what those true demographics are, before you can even begin to understand what you need to offer, how you need to offer it, and how often you need to offer those services. Your external resources, we have a money sign here. You know, overall, with all of these things and everything that you're doing and understanding, you must know, you know, where you stand certainly in a budget. What your sponsorship opportunities might be to, you know, really focus on the different things that you want to do. You just simply need to analyze all this and make sure that you have a full grip on what you can do, and what those strengths are. And certainly, you know, internally, you always need to make sure that you're going back and reevaluating yourself. When you're going through all of this different data, you know, it's one thing to have it on paper, to be able to work with that information as you're planning out the year, or maybe even a couple of years ahead, or maybe not that far ahead. But either way, it's one thing to have it down, but then what do you do with it after? You always need to go back and reanalyze that information and see what is different, what is going up, what is going down. Do we have, you know, more people that have participated in that? And make sure that a part of that process is evaluations, and not evaluations just to, say, even the members who might have participated in a given program, but what about the people that you invited who didn't come to that program? Are you asking them why they didn't come to the program, what they want to do? Sometimes that's that group out there that we tend to just lose because they're not right in front of us on a database, but honestly, that's the kind of the group of people that you are going to get even sometimes the best information from. So these are just a couple of key things that are very critical as you're going through this process that you must understand before you can proceed and really make a sound plan.
And I have just a couple of things to add to that. A lot of people get overwhelmed as well when we talk about a SWOT analysis. So intentionally, it wasn't called that on this slide. But if you'll notice, we've got internal and external. The internal is the strengths and weaknesses, and your external is the opportunities and threats. But just want you to keep in mind the external, you know, has a great bearing on what you can do, but most of the time you can't change those things, and you just need to don't get knee deep in the SWOT analysis, but just identify the 2 or 3 issues that affect your chapter the most. And affect what you're trying to do, and then move on and gauge how you did last year and what programs or events or initiatives or your sponsorship or revenue, and then how you're going to change it for the future. That helps you set up your key initiatives, which is what we're going to talk about next.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Tina and I are going to talk to this, and obviously, Tiffany, you can chime in here as well. Collective decision, your key initiatives. This is basically your goals. What are your goals going to be for this year? Maybe you already have a plan. 40% of you said you already have a plan, or maybe you're looking to just reevaluate that plan. For those of you who have a plan, looking at those goals and just deciding maybe there's 3, maybe there's 5, maybe there's 10. But breaking it down, going through each one every single year and making sure, just because you have a 5-year plan doesn't mean it's there and you don't revisit it in 5 years. You know, obviously making sure that your plan is in front of you at all times at meetings, and we'll get to that a little bit later regarding accountability. But look at the goals that you may already have set if you have a plan, and just going through those and seeing if some of them make sense, maybe they don't, maybe it'll never happen, and you just remove that goal and come up with maybe one new goal. Maybe most of them don't make sense or aren't relevant anymore or measurable or specific, and then you go ahead and just scratch the plan and start over. 60% of you are in the place where you said you don't have a plan. So obviously you're going to be starting from scratch. Just keeping in mind when you're setting a goal, the SMART method, being specific with the goal, being measurable with the goal, attainable. Is it attainable? I mean, some of us have these big dreams, and I have lots of them too, but it may not be attainable. It may not be attainable in a year. Maybe it's attainable in 5 years. Is it relevant, and is it time-bound? Again, keep them broad. At the same time being specific, and that sounds strange, but you do want to not just say build membership. You want to say, I want to increase membership by 3% or 5%, whatever that is, 15%. Refer to the SWOT, the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats when you're setting your goals, making sure they're in line, and focus and prioritize. I know that's, Tiffany reiterates this, making sure that you stay clear and focused. This does not have to be a hard process. You have your 5 goals written down. When you have those 5 goals for this year or the next coming 3 years, what order should they be prioritized in? The 5 goals, you just want to reiterate and prioritize. Tina or Tiffany, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do.
Tiffany, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Okay, what we mean by broad, too, even though you have to be specific, what we're talking about, and maybe a better terminology to use, is big picture. You want to say, 10,000 foot view, not on the ground. And so you want to make sure that your goals are big picture. And what I mean by that, well, before I give you that example, big picture, and then also know that even though 40% of you, I think Mary said, already have a strategic plan and goals, know that those goals from last year or from 3 years ago may not necessarily change every year.
Right.
In fact, they typically don't change year to year, but change every 3 to 5 years, because I'm talking about goals that are broad in spectrum, meaning increase revenue by a certain dollar amount within a certain time period, or increase membership by a certain percentage over a certain time period. Those kind of big strategic goals typically don't change unless we have a major change in the economy or in the industry or something, or within the organization. So just want to keep that in mind for, number one, they don't necessarily have to change, and number two, broad means big picture.
Right. I just want to add one more thing before we go to the next slide. When you're looking at all of these different things, and you're together, and you've put together this really great set of initiatives, whether they're continued on, like Tiffany said, these are things that you need to do over again, or maybe there's something new. You've put time into it, and these are really important things. But if you go to you're starting a new year, you have, say, the first board meeting of the year, and you don't have your plan with you. In the meeting, maybe you just said, oh, well, we're going to have the regular meeting agenda the way we always have, but maybe it has nothing to do with all the work you just put into with that strategic plan. So many of you are doing that, and some of you, I think, may not be doing that, but always make sure that you do have this available. So this document or the plan itself can be really simple, but make sure you bring it to that meeting with you. It can be really simple. It can be on maybe a big piece of paper in the room. It could be on a handout. It can be on the agenda itself. But make sure that as you're going through what needs to be done at your board meeting, that they're in line with those goals, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to achieve this at the end of the year. So it doesn't have to be, your board meetings are obviously going to be a little bit more specific, but maybe one of the things you can think about when you're putting together your board agendas, maybe you change that up a little bit. Put the board agenda maybe as it aligns to the goals. Maybe in the beginning it's not business as usual, just going over the minutes first, and then a consent agenda if you use that, and just saying, yeah, this is what we do, the minutes are fine. Put that at the end. Make the most important part of the agenda the parts of the goals that you need to achieve, and that'll give you really that focused, important time. And then at the end of the agenda, you can go through the regular routine of the board. But just little things like that, I think, are going to help you achieve the goals with the plan that all of you have put together.
Also, I forgot to throw this in here. Hello. The SWOT is named Collective Decisions. And that is because even though you're doing this assessment on your own and then you're doing it with a board during the strategic planning session, you always want to make sure that you have buy-in from everyone. And so this is the part where we all collectively decide the goals, at least for the coming year or 3 to 5 years, whether you're doing incorporating long-term into that or not, I don't know. But that's why we call it collective decisions.
Right. And like Tiffany said on the time frame, you can certainly have 3 columns on this, on your goal list. One is 6 months, maybe one's a year, maybe 5, 3, and then 5. But be realistic about the time frame. But certainly have those short-term and long-term goals. A good mix is what you want to have. And one idea, this is just something that came off of one of the chapter strategic plans, are their goals. One of their goals was, again, to broaden our network of premier firms, re-engage a firm that is no longer engaged with our chapter. They wanted to add 5 of those firms in 5 years. So 1 firm per year they wanted to either engage because they've never been engaged, and all of us know throughout the nation in your area, why isn't this firm a member? They should have, this is a big firm and we haven't been able to rope them in yet. Find that that's going to be a goal of yours, and then how are you going to get there? You're going to go visit them, set up, lunches with them, and invite them, maybe give them some free passes to an educational session or whatever that may be. But adding 1 firm per year, that was one of the goals. So just to give you an idea. Implementation, number 3. Use action plan worksheets, and you must have a champion. Tiffany, did you want to talk about this sample that you provided?
Sure. On the implementation side of things, once you set your goals, I really think an appropriate place, a bunch of ideas and brainstorming comes up during this goal setting, and like to have a certain event or to offer a certain type of sponsorship, or little initiatives or programs or events. All those ideas come spouting out during this process. Those can kind of be saved as long as they fit into your main goals. Those can kind of be saved for offline in your committee, in my opinion, where you come up with your action plan of how to get to these goals. Or maybe that's meeting 2. I'm sure Tina and Mary will have chime in on that. But one thing that I found that I did that was very helpful was to make a list of the goals, whether it's 1, 2, or 5, or whatever, and put the action item of how you're specifically going to get to that goal, and make the action items SMART action items, just like the SMART goals are. So your action item here, when you're trying to increase the visibility of the organization, typically you would put by a certain time period and whatnot, but the action item would be, we're going to host a networking event with at least 3 other professional organizations. We're going to do it every year. We're going to start it in 2012. We have to have it by October 2011. Oops, that doesn't make sense, but you guys get my drift. And then Sarah Lee is in charge of it. So I find that these things are really helpful as well to track who's doing what and when everything is due, and they actually hold people accountable for what they said they were going to do.
Yeah, this is really nice. This is, again, a quick glimpse at a spreadsheet that you can quickly just take and make it your own. When you get, these goals outlined, it's very clear, the frequency of it, start date, due date, and champion. I think it's great, and this is a great sample for you guys to use.
And make sure, too, this is Tiffany again, sorry, make sure, too, I forgot I wanted to say that if someone, often we have, wouldn't it be great if we had a big holiday party or an open house, or wouldn't it be great if we offered to have a free networking lunch for non-members or something like that. If board and committee members are coming up with all these grand ideas, go back to the SMART goals and make sure that any initiative that you're doing fits in to the big picture goals, and that's why this worksheet works. When anybody on the board comes and says, I want to do this, then when I was president, I would say, then what goal does that help us reach?
That's a great thought.
There is one question out there I just want to throw out before we go to the next slide. And this is from Jennifer Kilgore. Jennifer, you were asking about, I think you have a great idea of putting together a survey before you have your strategic plan, and you wanted to get some feedback. Her specific question, let me read it. One thing I wanted to do before starting all of my strategic planning was to do a member survey. How are we doing? How can we improve? What do you want to see? That type of thing. Basically, a 10 to 12 question online survey. Thoughts on this? Is it a good idea, and any aspects to cover specifically? Tiffany, do you want to address any of that first?
Well, I think that's an excellent idea. I think anytime that you can survey your membership and ask them what they want, obviously, that's a good idea. And I'm sure SMPS National has the tools to help you do that. I guess my thoughts on that are just be careful as to the individual feedback you get may not always relate back to the big picture about what we're trying to do with the organization. Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe it will.
No, that's great. I think it's a great idea. This is Mary. It can't hurt, certainly, to send out a survey to the membership or even to all of the past board members, and if you have any recruited yet, you're incoming, and getting specific ideas from them and evaluating that. I think it could be a great resource.
That'll help you answer to the internal analysis when we talk about how we did. I think that's really where that's going to help you.
Right. And I will offer one other thing, too. I mean, I think this is a really great idea. And kind of going back to what I had mentioned in a couple of slides ago, is that depending on some of the things you think you may need to work on, maybe membership growth is one of them, you might want to put together a special survey just to those people who maybe have been members, maybe people who have been going to your sessions for a long time but still are not becoming members, and maybe put together a quick survey of like, well, want to grow our membership, but what is it that would make it happen for you? And then when you start working on your strategic plan, maybe there's a place for that. Maybe there's a place for that information after you've covered some things in your strategic plan. But based on what you think might be important, you just might want to consider, again, that group of individuals who aren't so engaged.
Okay.
Good point.
Thank you, guys. And we're at 10 after 3, so we're going to get through the second part of this presentation. Coming up here is on recruiting volunteers, which I know is very important to many of you. But like these questions here, these 5 questions, again, I think you should reference once you have, thought about this yourself, your own personal thoughts, you've had your meeting and you guys have thrown out the goals, you've got them on paper, before you put your stamp of approval on your final plan, just excuse me, run through these questions. Will the goals and strategies identified meet the needs of the members? Sometimes we, in our mind, think, oh, these are such great goals, but then maybe they don't meet what we think the needs of the members or what the members' needs are. Does your chapter have sufficient funds? That's a huge thing. I mean, obviously, and maybe you have quite a bit of funds and you're being more conservative in your goals. It's nice, we do get our financial report so we know what the chapters have in reserve. And certainly if you have you don't want to tap into all of it. We know all of that. You would definitely want to keep a good base in your bank account, but certainly recycling some of those reserves and those funds back into your chapter and helping meet some of these goals is okay. And if you're uncertain and you're just not sure when it comes to the finance part, Tina and I are here to help, and we can help you analyze that with you. Will the chapter be able to successfully implement the plan? Let's be realistic, making sure that it is reachable and attainable. Will this plan produce desired results, and will our chapter be able to complete it in the allotted time frame? So again, hopefully you're thinking this throughout and asking these questions throughout, but it's just, again, once it's done, before you finalize it, go through these questions one more time. Evaluation, the evaluation process. Tiffany, again, we'll just quickly cover the accountability part and regular review of your actual plan once it's complete and it's final.
Okay. I'm from the South, but I'm going to talk really fast on this. Okay. You have to have a regular review and follow-up. Tina already mentioned it. I think Ann Mary, have the plan at every board meeting to remind you of where you're at. And then also maybe even mid-year or quarterly, you want to actually sit down. I don't know if you want to do it by yourself or with your executive board or with the whole board. You assess where you are on a regular basis. And then also be able to change and adapt according to how things are going. That's key. So regular review and follow-up, be able to change and adapt. And then number 3, I think that is important, is when you do the review and follow-up, you are holding people accountable, and I think you'll find people are more likely to do the things that they said they would do if they know that you are going to ask about it.
Right, and during a meeting, like Tiffany's saying, at our national board meetings, every national board meeting, we have our 2020 vision right on the table, and we have our other more the action plan laid out as well, and we touch on those items, and we are always making sure when new initiatives are brought to the table or whatever it may be, that it is in line, like Tina said, with what our goals are. So it's just a reference thing to have there. Also, you're holding people accountable, and I think when people come to meetings, they know they're going to talk about this goal again and where am I at on this goal. It's good that you're holding them accountable so they come to the table with something that they can at least say, I've made a couple of phone calls to this new firm and I'm reaching out and we have lunch set. It's good to have that. You have to have that. And it also, when a goal has been attained or a piece of a goal has been accomplished, it's good to celebrate and to reward that, and recognize that person and say, wow, this person's already hit this goal and we're only 6 months in. It's also giving that time for recognition. I think that's very important. Tina, did you have anything? I just want to jump on to reward.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so again, rewarding. This kind of jumps right into celebrating. So once your chapter reaches a goal and has had an outstanding program, maybe it's not a goal specific, but making sure if you've had an outstanding program or one of your new volunteers or past volunteers really shines and has accomplished something, please remember to recognize, reward, and celebrate. I know that so much, your meetings are a lot of business, and it should be, but then, a lot of times you can have fun as well, and I know that a lot of you do, and a lot of you are great at this. And recognizing, I know Tina and Kevin Doyle just attended a DC appreciation lunch today. They were appreciating their members, appreciating their volunteers, and it's a great way to recognize these individuals. Just saying thank you. Just saying thank you for doing this, for volunteering, and for making that happen. I could not have done it without you. Writing a thank you card, writing it. Not sending an email, actually writing a card. Recognize your successes and those volunteers by sharing, before a lunch. You're going to have a lunch program. Please, Jane Doe, stand up. She just did this great thing for our chapter, and she really needs to be recognized. And can we give her a round of applause? And maybe the more they see excitement around that, more people might be willing to volunteer if you just take 2 seconds to do that for your volunteers. The last is just get testimonials. One thing I recommend is just like we do nationally, we get testimonials from leaders and from members, and we try to use them in marketing pieces and throughout. I suggest getting testimonials from your volunteers, those experienced and passionate leaders. Do an interview with them. Sit down and say, what is it that made you volunteer? Why did you stick around for 5 years? What is it that it gave to you professionally and personally? And put that on paper. Share it in your newsletter, put it on your website, or maybe just combine, run them all together in a PDF and make a pamphlet so that when you have your next recruiting event, you can hand out those pamphlets and people can, because I know me, if you just come to me and say, be membership chair, it's exciting, you can do it. But there's no description, there's no feeling behind it. You tell me your story and tell me why I might be willing to step up to the plate. Now we're going to jump into, again, the scene. The scene is, I'm sure you guys have all been there before. It's a Tuesday afternoon. You're at a luncheon for your chapter in front of 100 members, and you're doing your blanketed statement. Please volunteer. We really need you to volunteer. It's a great experience. You'll gain skills, but it's this blanketed mass expression to the entire group in front of you. And no one really says anything, or maybe there's a frantic board member that says, we can't have this program, we're not going to be able to do the next program if someone doesn't help us and volunteer, if we don't start getting volunteers. And then, of course, an overworked member or someone who's volunteered time and time again raises their hand and says, yes, I'll do it again. And we don't want to burn out those people. So I'm sure this sounds familiar to all of you. And this is, or as you're getting closer to your year, you haven't done a lot of recruiting in these months that are so vital, the coming months, and it's almost August or July and you don't have those seats filled. And I know it's hard. Sometimes you get them filled and someone may not be able to come through for you or circumstances change. And we know it's a struggle. We know you guys work extremely hard to recruit members. So, but these are some good points coming up here. So this is, Tina's going to go through this, recruiting volunteers. This is a great website that I love, volunteerpower.com. Thomas McKee, he has several books out as well, but the 7 deadly sins of recruiting members. Tina, can you run through these for us?
Sure, and I don't know how many of you knew that there were 7 deadly sins of recruiting volunteers.
There are.
Indeed, there are. So let's just talk about this a little bit. We know how challenging it can be for all of you bringing in volunteers and to get the work done. And before I go into all of this, the one thing I want to make sure that every single one of you know, and we will repeat this at PLS, is that if you ever find that you may lose a volunteer simply because maybe they have they just lost a job, or maybe, they just can't renew their membership right now, but there's good reason to think in 4 months they will, but they're really fulfilling something meaningful for you, they're helping you, we will always work with your volunteers to make sure that they retain that membership and give them an opportunity to come back and join, either with a supporting firm or maybe through, various other types of payment ways, for dues to help them through it. But either way, if you find yourself in that position, do not hesitate to either call me or Mary to see what we can do to help you out. We don't want any of you to lose promising and key volunteers simply because of the membership status at that moment. So,
right.
That said, let's talk about these 7. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, Tina, I was going to give you a time check. We've got 15 minutes, and we still want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So,
okay, we'll go through quickly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Sin 1, expect announcements to get volunteers. If any of you are going out and sending either a blanket announcement either on your website or just through maybe an email blast, and you're just saying, hey, we need volunteers, we want you to be a part of this, chances are you're not really very successful at it. The American Society of Association Executives put together a survey about a year and a half ago on the decision to volunteer. Overwhelmingly, out of 500 plus associations that responded, the overwhelming reason why people do not volunteer is because they were not personally asked to do so. And that's exactly
Amen.
What this point is. I mean, you must go. If you're at an event, and it doesn't even matter what the event is for. It's an educational program, it's a panel session, it's an event, it's a social event. Every single one of your leaders has an opportunity to meet a new person, to engage someone and say, you know what, have you ever thought about volunteering? Or, just a way to get engaged. But when you do it that way, it makes them feel, first of all, that you genuinely want them to be a part of that organization, that they genuinely have something to offer. Many times what happens is people feel that they don't even have the qualifications to volunteer or to do work at a certain level, and obviously that is just not the case. So please, when you know that you're out there, you need to get new volunteers, the first thing you should do, if you can't meet them face-to-face in an event and really get it going that way, always give them a personal call. You have a member list, you have their names. If they're busy, you say, well, I'll just call you another time if it's okay with you. But either way, make it personal. I promise you that you will get, even if it wasn't for the specific position you're looking for, you still might get someone who's interested in giving maybe an hour a month or doing something different that you didn't originally intend to. But either way, now you have someone who really feels that they're needed, and chances are you're going to get many more volunteers as a result. Sin number 2. To go it alone. There shouldn't be just one person. It shouldn't be just the president or a committee chair who is responsible for bringing in new volunteers. So when you're working on bringing in volunteers and, it's an initiative, maybe you need to start thinking, well, first of all, everyone on the board should be responsible for really bringing in new blood. And one of the things that you need to think about also, and I just noticed this recently, I think DC is doing this. I think Columbus might be doing something like this. But they're actually putting together volunteer committees, outreach. So, maybe there's, a team of individuals who are responsible for really going out there, making those connections and, really inviting them and making it meaningful and see what kind of talent is out there. But the point is, just don't do this one person, all alone. All of you as a team, you really need to make this happen. Sin number 3, recruit lifetime individuals, not short-term teams or short-term even projects. Here's what the gist of this is. You shouldn't or really think twice about trying to recruit someone who is going to be doing membership for the next 3 years. That they feel that there is no out. Sometimes people really need to be, challenged and mix things up a little bit. So one of the most successful models of a lot of volunteer organizations are those groups who can engage volunteers to do like really quick, short-term type of projects. So they feel like, oh, well, I've done this and I can check it off, and maybe a little bit later they'll be in a position where they can do something a little bit longer term. But everyone still needs to feel that there's a breather at the end of a given project, or or a given term, and maybe do something different, or just give it a rest and come back later. But either way, please make sure that you're really thinking about it in those terms, and you'll still probably even get more individuals helping you with that. Sin number 4, assume that no means never. You're always going to have people say, no, I just can't do it right now, I'm busy, too much going on. But you know what? In another 6 months from now, they might say, you know what, things have changed. I'd really be glad. I'm glad you came back to me. I'm glad to help out in any way I can. Sin number 5, fall into the BIC trap, B-I-C, but in the chair trap. Mary, do you want to talk on this just a little bit?
Sure. It's just, we've all been there, and well, we and you guys as volunteers, and I've helped and tried to support many chapters that have been in this predicament. But you get so close to the time when you're going to take office, and we just need to get someone in the chair. We just need to get someone to fill this position, and it's going to happen sometimes. We understand that, and you just have to make the most of that, and hopefully mentor that person, and maybe down the road, if that specific role wasn't the right one for that person, or they don't have the skills necessarily, maybe you find something else that better fits them, and once you've been able maybe to recruit a different person that fits better for that position. So yes, it happens, but don't just walk away from it at that point. Okay, it's filled, I'm done. Really continue to evaluate your volunteers and in the position that they're filling. Are they, is that personality suited? Maybe there's an introverted person who you've had tackling the membership chair, become, has membership chair, that may not be best suited for them. Maybe they're better on your communications and writing articles for your newsletter. So just really, it's knowing sometimes it's going to happen, you just have to fill that position, but just going back to that regularly, making sure that the volunteer is in the right position for them.
Right. And that goes into Sim 6, be people-driven rather than position-driven. You don't want to just go ahead and volunteer people just for the sake of volunteering. You really need to have, a job for them, but it needs to be the right job. So what is it that you need to have done? And then think about how you can really best position those people who are willing to help you out in those particular spots. So I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but please understand one of the biggest challenges, and one of the calls that we get frequently here at SMPS National and that our board members get, is that there's a challenge because someone, was taken on a job, it was the chair of a given committee, or, maybe they're working in communications, but they just didn't have the talent or even the support to make that happen. So all of these things are very, very important when you're recruiting your volunteers. And Mary, number 7?
Yep, again, just give the position, when you give, the sin is when you give the position the wrong job description. I know it sounds confusing, but all of you probably have job descriptions for each one of the roles or board member roles that you have. If you don't, please contact me. I have sample job descriptions for just about every position. A lot of these are chapters samples that I have collected over the years, so you can take something from them. But the last thing you want to do is have, something in writing that says this is what I'm going to expect of you through the year, and you maybe it's something in writing and you give it to them, and then it's all throughout the year it's nothing what you had written. You just take an old job description because that's what you've always had and that's in your chapter manual, and you hand it out to them, and then the position ends up being something completely different. So that can frustrate a volunteer, and maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's not, but you certainly want to make sure you're clear on that. And I'm just going to run through these really quickly because we have 5 minutes left, and I really want to give a chance for any questions that you all may have. So if you do have questions at this point, you can click on your green hand button, raise your hand, and Tina will get to those once this is over. or you can certainly type in a text question. So again, thoughts and tips on recruiting. I'm just reiterating what we've all said quickly. Don't blanket ask each person directly. Have coffee with a person. And I think it's important, like Tina's saying also, but know your message. Know what is your story. Just don't sit down, I want you for this, and these are the 5 goals I want you, it's all business. Open that conversation up with, this is what SMPS means to me. This is what it's done for me personally, and maybe you have other testimonials from other volunteers that you know how SMPS volunteering has affected them personally and professionally, and share those stories. That's how I feel you can really sell becoming a volunteer. And then, again, be very specific on what you expect of that person. I only want you to do one work registration table for 2 events, or I only want you to handle 1 membership campaign. Then they might say, that's a reasonable task. I know there's an end in sight. They agree to do it. And then once they're in the mix, and hopefully they're mentored and they feel a part of the group, they'll be willing then to maybe step up and do something else. Be clear on the specifics. We already went over that. Volunteers are more willing to say yes to a short-term commitment than with an end date in sight. Again, if you just say, will you be programs chair, you need to be specific what you expect of them, and maybe take that programs chair position and break it down into 5 small pieces. You might be more willing to get, you're thinking, oh, I can't get 1 volunteer, how am I going to get 5? Well, I tell you, I'm going to be a lot more apt to maybe, if I'm not aware of an association or what it's all about, to sign up for a smaller piece, a smaller task, and it's direct, than I will be just to take on being programs chair. So a lot of chapters have begun creating programs chair and a co-chair, so there's 2 filling that role along with the committee. And then a volunteer coordinator position. This is something I read about in a couple of books and other things. I think it's a great idea if you have an opportunity to bring back a past president or someone that in your chapter that knows your membership, or you just want to engage them again, ask them to be a volunteer coordinator. There's nothing really that they, just reporting to you, communicating to you through email when they come across somebody or they meet a member that just shines, and this person might be good, at writing for the newsletter or handling programs, or maybe a sponsorship person, and then they're communicating with them and keeping them in the loop. Again, there are a few other little tips. Recognize new members and volunteers as often as you can. Recognizing those new members and volunteers, making them feel a part of the clique. Every time you guys go to an event, don't have your board members all clicking together and sitting together, making sure that you guys are mentoring each other. Having a resource listing, a small listing of tasks that you have, list them all out, and then put them out at your events. And so these small tasks, like I said, if it's 1 thing, they can sign up for that 1 task. Envoy programs, matching a new volunteer with a passionate leader, making sure they stay feeling that good fuzzy feeling, and then you can also do surveys. That's it. I know we kind of ran through that last part. There's a lot of good information here. We did record this session, so if you want to go back and listen to it again, as well as look at the presentation, you can share it with your board. We will be sending this out within 24 hours to you with a link to the recording. Tina, at this point, is there any questions or hands raised?
I don't have any hands raised, but I do have a question. They simply want to know if the slides are going to be available. The recording will certainly be available, just as Mary said, and we can put the slides in the PLS community of the presentation itself.
Right. This reminder slide that you're looking at now, again, the webinar is recorded, and I will make the slides and sample strategic plans, as well as the sample that Tiffany provided us of an action plan, will be in the MySMPS, your PLS class community. If you're not aware of this, MySMPS, if you've never heard of MySMPS, please call me. Or email me, mary@smps.org. If you don't know what MySMPS is, you need to be aware. And if you're not familiar with it, you've heard of it still, please contact me, and I will walk you through it personally and show you what this community is, your PLS class community. All of you are automatically a part of this community, and there's lots of resources in the library in this community, and that's where this recording is going to be. Again, a reminder quickly, PLS conference is April 19th through the 21st, 2012 in Old Town Alexandria. We sent out a save the date, and more on the program and everything will be coming out this following week. We're having our big final planning session this week, so a lot more on the program will be disseminated in the coming weeks. But if you have any questions, you want to book your flights now, just contact me. It should start at noon on Thursday and end at noon on Saturday. And the next PLS conference webinars that we're going to have the next in the series is February 22nd, same time on finance and membership highlights. And the third is on March 14th, same time, and it's just about making the most of PLS. It's those last minute details we just want to convey to you. So again, we thank you all. We're here for you, the national staff, Tina, myself, Tiffany, Nola, any of the board members. Please reach out to us and contact us anytime following this throughout the next couple of months before PLS. We're happy to help you any way that we can. With that, we're right at the 3:30 mark. So again, we appreciate all of you taking the time to join us. That is it. Thank you so much, and you guys have a wonderful day.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.